You're listening to the Naptime Empires podcast with my mom, Nicki Brown. Mom, your show's on.
Thanks, bud. I got it from here. Welcome to the Naptime Empires podcast, refreshingly honest conversations on the realities of parenthood and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Nicki Brown. Let's get started. I've got a super special episode in store for you today. It's a little bit different because this season so far has just been solo episodes, but this episode is a conversation with one of my very best friends, Jadah Sellner. She's an author, speaker, mom, wife, coach, amazing friend. We talk about this in the conversation, but we basically talk to each other all day, every day. We call each other our Polly Pockets, and we get to see each other in real life as often as possible. Obviously, not last year in 2020, but we, at the time that we're recording this, just got back from one of our most recent squad trips. So we talk about that. We talk about our book processes and behind the scene conversations, sharing about managing our health and mom guilt and marriage and motherhood and all of these things as we've been in what Jadah calls the creative cocoon season, a little bit on the vision for what's next as these books eventually make their way out into the world and into your hands and earbuds, hopefully. I hope you enjoy this conversation. We literally dream of being able to have in real life conversations with you, talking about all of these things once weekday, once our books are out and we have tangible assets to point you to and be like, what do you think? What are your thoughts? Let's discuss. So this is kind of our way of manifesting to that point, little by little, in the form that we can, to be able to invite you to join us for this conversation. So again, I hope you enjoy. Tag us on Instagram. She's at Jadah Sellner. I'm at Nicki Brown, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and any light bulb moments that this conversation sparks for you. All right, catch you on the other side.
Nicki Brown. Hi! This is a Polly Pocket edition where you get to be a fly on the wall of Nicki and I having our conversations that, what did you call it? We have a never ending.
Yeah, because we were just like, oh, have we done this before? Have we had this conversation on Jadah's podcast? And we forgot that we did actually have a conversation that went live in December of 2020. And I'm like, well, no wonder we're confused because our life is literally just one constant conversation. We talk all day. Nobody has this verbal processing stamina that we do.
So how would you define verbal processing? It's something I had to define in my book recently. And I was just curious how you,
I like it.
People don't know what that even means.
We just think out loud. We tend to think out loud. Some people journal and write things out, but we tend to think out loud. And it's nice to have a real life processing partner who can like go toe to toe, like having a power walking buddy who's going the marathon. I feel like that's what you are with me in all the different areas of life, that we can be like, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I had for lunch. There may be a degree of codependency, but I'm okay with it.
Yes. And just to give people a little bit of a background reminder of who you are, because we actually have had 2 conversations on the Lead with Love podcast. Mm-hmm. You were my very first, you interviewed me in episode 000. Welcome to the Lead with Love podcast. So I will definitely link to the show notes for that. And then in episode 181, we talked about refining your F management system with you. So if y'all want to learn all of Nicki's word nerd isms, there's plenty of them in there where she talks about profitable priorities and just how to navigate family, biz, self, all those beautiful things. And also just a reminder of what an awesome human being you are. You are a fully expressed mama, teacher, speaker, podcast host of Naptime Empires. You also are, you're like the secret vault coach behind the scenes.
That top secret security clearance.
Yes. What do you call it? Perception shifts?
Permission slips and perception shifts.
Yes. And I feel very, very honored that I get access to that along with your word pickle support behind the scenes in our app in Voxer. And if you all want to binge on some of Nicki's good lovin', her good words, definitely check out the Naptime Empires podcast too.
Yes, where Jadah was one of my first guests. We recorded it 5 years ago in 2016, and then it aired. I'm looking in my podcast app right now, January 24th, 2017, your episode 6, Jadah Sellner on building an empire with intention, which is like so perfect. We even had build in the title. Building an Empire. It's a She Builds Naptime Empires mashup.
Yes.
Yeah. Because we go way back to 2013. So we have a whole catalog for y'all to listen to our conversations in years past.
Yeah. So I know this season of life for us is you actually have, what season are you in on Naptime Empires right now?
I'm calling it season 4 book mode. So that's why we're going to tuck this baby right on in there. If you're listening in Naptime Empires, welcome. Please go check out Jadah on her Lead with Love podcast.
I love it. I love it. And I'm in season 4 too. So all I see is the giant like twin emoji, which is we are running on parallel paths. We are parallel playmates. We are mamas, we're entrepreneurs. And yes, season 4 book mode, which is something that I do want to talk about today, because I feel like that's all I'm doing is eating and sleeping and thinking about my book. Like it's all consuming. So I'd love a little update of where you are with your book right now, because we did talk about the book in our previous conversation on the Lead with Love podcast.
Right.
But, catch us up.
So what we talked about had to have been that I had written the whole manuscript, or like the first draft of the manuscript for Naptime Empires, with the intention to self-publish. I did that in one of the first months of quarantine in a wild and intense span of like 12 days, was it? I don't know. You were with me on a lot of those Zoom calls. I'm calling us Pom Queens because of our Pomodoro style, where it's just like Pac-Man. Like we just take it once we have our own timeline set and go for it. So I was all abuzz on my pregnancy fumes at that time, because I was like, I could get the book out by the time the baby's here. If we had that conversation, it would have been where I had readjusted my timeline basically. And I was realizing the benefits that I didn't get it all together to self-publish before she came, because life has shifted. Now that she's here, I hit the reset timer on my own Naptime Empire life. And it's a completely different style this way. Like when I started my business with Bryson, baby number 1, he was already here in toddler mode. And then it was a much different thing to have a business and then have the baby for number 2. And then while I've been in my like semi-sabbatical mode to bring her into the mix, while I'm actually just ready to step forward into a new business model that really fits and suits the lifestyle that I'm like pretty clear on, at least for this next season, was a different thing. So I'm just being more patient with the timeline. But probably the biggest update, because I haven't even touched the docs in months as the time we're recording this, but the biggest update is when you called me out on my poop in my pool. That sounds gross. But in June, when you came to visit and we had a conversation and you asked this life-changing question while we were in my pool with our buddy Jen Kim, and you asked me, do you think you haven't actually pushed this forward because you'd rather go this traditional publishing route? And I was like, ooh, I think you're right. And so I've been doing my own decision-making process on at least pursuing a traditional publishing deal, because I do know in my heart that that is something I believe at least I would love to experience in this lifetime, and at least go for it. Because I also know there are drawbacks to it and there are plenty of benefits to self-publishing, and that's always going to be an option. So that's the update, is that starting in 2022, I will be putting together a formal book proposal and shopping Naptime Empires around to see if we can find a win-win situation with a traditional publisher.
There are so many things. I'm like, pen. So I want to say, when we were in the pool, and Nicki has a fabulous like Ariel's grotto pool in her backyard. And because we were in Texas, it was basically a ginormous hot tub. The water was so warm and I was so happy.
I turned the heat on just for you.
Yes, because I am obsessed with hot tubs. But what I want to say is, something that I do on our squad trips. So there's the 4 of us. We call it squad with a capital Q because there's 4 of us. So Jen Kim, Nicole Walters, Nicki Brown, and myself, Jadah Sellner. And something that I tend to do, because I have so much background information on Nicki, your like all your thoughts, right? From the verbal processing. So I try to be really careful. And so sometimes I'll ask Jen a question, like I'll be like, Jen, do you think? And so, but when we asked about the traditional publishing question, you were an immediate yes. It wasn't in a like, ooh, you might have felt that on the inside, but like the energy of, there was just this fierce, like inner knowing that I sensed right away. And there was actually no question or hesitancy in your response to it. There was like what you call like getting sparky. You totally got sparky with it. And then there's obviously the fears and the hesitations that come with that, right? Of like, oh, is my platform big enough? Am I like all of those things? Have any of those things popped up for you in pursuing going the book proposal, this more traditional publishing route? Like, what are some of the
for
fears
sure,
and hesitancies?
The biggest thing, and as you're saying it, I'm hearing it as what my friend Erin Ashley Carty calls a claircog hangover, in terms of like being claircognizant. We hear clairvoyance, there's clairsentient, there's clairaudience, in terms of just how you receive your intuitive knowing the strongest. And for me, it's claircognizance. It just feels like, yes, I know that that is true, or that is right for me in this moment. And then afterwards, you have what she calls a claircog hangover, which is when all these doubts swoop in and all of the fears and all of that. So I'm actually, since I'm on the other side of it, it's like, it was easy for me to forget. No, at the time it was just clear, like, yes, of course. And then all my fears and things came up. But what I realized was it was really like, I was actually just trying to protect myself from rejection if I wasn't able to get a traditional book deal. So I was actually just self-selecting. I'm just going to stay right here in my own, where I can control pretty much all the outcomes and do all the things. And it's all on me, which is benefit and drawback, right? Like if it is to be, it's up to me. And then if I'm not doing it, then it's not happening. It's not rolling forward. So I became my own bottleneck. But yeah, so, me and my decision-making process. And I share that in an episode over on Naptime Empires, where I literally walk through what my decision-making process looks like in terms of making the table, the 4-square table, basically, of the benefits of traditional publishing and the drawbacks to traditional publishing, and the benefits of self-publishing and the drawbacks to self-publishing. And then just letting my overthinky brain run wild until it has no more answers and it's said all that it needs to say. And then that way I can be like, okay, in my heart, seeing all these things as objectively and mindfully as possible, which do I choose? And so that's when I was like, okay, I'll go for it.
I loved listening to that episode. So let's definitely link back to that. Yeah. Speaking of links, how are you linking? Because you've reset the timeline. So I'm curious, and you can define what linking is, but how are you linking the book and the timeline of also prioritizing family and having a toddler at home? I'm curious what that process is like for you right now.
It'll be interesting, right? Because I'm not actually diving back into it for a couple more, I guess it's really just a month and a half now at the time that we're recording this. So I'll be dipping back into it soon, and then being like fully appreciating how intense you've been with your book focus for the last few months. Like you've really found pace. So I can't wait to talk about that. But for me, linking, and I haven't talked about this yet anywhere publicly, is a couple months ago, as you know, I noticed a little pink spot on my shoulder that I thought was unusual. And I went to the dermatologist just to have things checked out, because I know in my head, they're like, if there's anything that you're not used to seeing, just come get it checked out. Anyway, it turned out to be a basal cell carcinoma. So is this, the most superficial, lightest type of skin cancer or cancer that you can have, but it's still the C word. And that's enough to scare the crap out of you and just make you really think about like, wait, what's happening? What does this mean? Why is this happening? So I was using all of my tools to figure out and work through it and like, see, what does this mean to me? This might not seem connected, but I promise I'm getting there. To me, asking, why is this happening? Why this specific form of feedback in my body? Why here on my shoulder, on my right side of all sides? Like, why is this happening? And to me, it was serving as a wake-up call because the right side is associated with the masculine and the weight on the shoulder, and like the pressure that I've been putting on myself to figure out what the heck I do want to do with my business moving forward. It's just like, okay, it's time. I'm not going to put it off anymore. It actually activated my mama bear mode to link, as you're talking about, which is based on the work I do using John DeMartini's values determination process and all of that. It's like knowing what your values are. And I like to see it as a recycle emoji, like linking them to where they are so connected that that when you're working on your book, you're actually loving and supporting your family. When you're with your family, you're getting great content and really showing up in your life as you want to, and integrity, so that when you are promoting your book or writing it, that you can be more fully present there. Linking all of those values is just really clear to me. Like, okay, great. I realized that the time and energy I want to put into book stuff and business stuff is actually going to support my family, because pretending like I don't care about it was literally starting to like eat at me. Like literally, I have a big scar on my shoulder, not big, it's like a centimeter. But to me, it's like, okay, I have this reminder, and I actually think it's beautiful because this little scar on my shoulder now is just reminding me to keep going and choose my flavor of discomfort so that I can create and leave this legacy, so that, even on the basic leaving a digital footprint, and even in paper, right? Like the books that you're writing, Zoe's going to be reading, and future generations will be reading. It's like you leaving your mark, literally and figuratively. So there's also that. That was a lot.
I love all your muchness. So the lot is welcome. I love the recycling emoji and trying to, not even trying, but connecting those pieces. As you were saying that, I feel a strong sense around that as I'm working on my book, and I am in a full like vortex of creation and writing and editing, and feel this sense of guilt of how much time I'm putting into the book right now. I feel really proud of myself, and I express that to George, my husband, and my daughter Zoe, and I share with them, like, I finished chapter 10, and Zoe's like, that's so great. Like, I love modeling that I'm working on something that's bringing me a lot of joy, that it's allowing me to be creatively expressed and share my story. And, my daughter, she loves writing. She loves creative writing and reading fiction books and things like that. And so it just feels very cool to show her what's possible, that she could write down her words, and also what it takes, that it's not just like write a story down and then you're done, but how many revision processes, how many drafts there are, how many people. One thing that I always do when I pick up a book, I don't read a lot of books, but when I do, even if I don't finish them, I always read the acknowledgements page first. I don't know if you knew that about me.
Yes, I love that you do it.
It's just my favorite, because I'm like, look at all these humans that it took to pull this tiny rectangular object into form for people to hold and to cry and to laugh and to be inspired and to have aha moments. I'm just so inspired by that. It's not just one person that's writing a book. There's so many people like sitting on the bus with you to bring ideas and projects to life. So that's just one of my favorite things to do.
I love that you do that. And it's just so you that you do that. It's like the warm hug section of the book. It's your first place to go. And I'm wondering, because I've witnessed it firsthand, right? Because I do get to be your Polly Pocket and to see you and hear you and knowing, okay, she's going in, she's got her Pomodoros, like life is still happening. There's been all kinds of things going on in your life for the last few months as you've really been like finding your pace and your rhythm and your flow and all of that. And I don't know how much you've already covered in other episodes, so just take this for what you will. But what do you think has been most helpful to you in like locking in? Like, I'm not, kind of like the dog with a bone where it's like, no, I'm actually not letting go, where there have been times over the last few years where like a dabble here, a dabble there, which is more still where I am right now. But you're like, no, author pants mode is fully engaged, even if we're just waiting for cupcakes or coffee at Magnolia, last week, like I could get in, these 2 sentences or like these 2 sections, like you got your laptop with you everywhere. What has really made the difference for you in terms of feeling like it's go time, this is happening, I'm committed, and I'm getting the support that I need to be able to get these ideas on the page?
Yeah, I think that word support that you said has been key for me in ramping up my energy. As Rebecca McLaughlin talks about us as big energy women, where we have a lot of like the surge of big creative output, which will, ultimately be followed by a crash. But I did a lot of crashing over the summer and the fall from all the big things that were happening in my life. And so I'm in the creative push, the creative output. And the thing that has maintained my stamina is definitely the support squad, which is one of my chapters in the book, Gather Your Support Squad. And definitely you having this, my Polly Pocket accountability, just someone witnessing. That's what you were talking about at the top of this conversation, is our verbal processing stamina. Like, we know what we ate for breakfast, what calls we have on our schedules.
My doctor's appointment reschedule.
Yeah. Right. We're whispering in closets if we're like mad at our husbands, and we're having a vent session, or in school pickup drop-off lines, on the way to a massage appointment. We are so tethered to each other in that form. And it's really helpful that I can kind of share my full life with you, and also get into the details about, I'm starting my next Pomodoro. And for those who don't know what the Pomodoro Technique is, I did want to define that. It's based off an Italian timer, like a kitchen timer. And so you set a timer for 25 minutes and you work for a focused amount of time without any distractions. And then you take a 5-minute break. And I can do like up to 3, sometimes even 4 Pomodoros before I like shake my booty and get up. But sometimes I'm breaking, for that 5-minute break. So I just wanted to define that for those who don't know what a Pomodoro is. So that's been really helpful, is just having a friend who's on the journey and just like cheering me on. And then also working with Rebecca, having someone who's looking at all the pieces of my life that are happening. I lost my bonus grandfather a few weeks ago. He passed away, and navigating grief, and just giving me the permission and reminder that, hey, let the book down for a few days and then come back up. There's something about people in your corner. And like you said, permission slips and perception shifts are so important, to have someone on the outside looking in who knows your capacity and what you're capable of, but also reminds you of when it's like, go rest, and so that was really helpful to kind of not keep going and keep pushing when it's like, oh, right, grief, let's create some space for this and not power through. So that's been really helpful, is just having someone who can see me tending to all the pieces of my life, and also naming like any guilt that does come up, because I did several book writing retreats and there was guilt with that. So being able to name it and then
guilt around how you showed up to the retreat, or what you ended up getting out of it, maybe, or what was the guilt around with the book writing retreat?
Oh, the guilt was leaving my family, leaving the house. And we have a 10-month-old puppy. And so all right, George, so you're on walking duty with Beasley. And just because I did it 3 weeks in a row, where I went away for 3 to 4 nights. And also that's very restorative for an introvert, like a social introvert like me. I'm like, woo, by myself. And so, there was some guilt in leaving my family for so many days in a row, but I did come back to touch back in. So there was guilt around that, or is my husband feeling overwhelmed or stressed that he's taking all the at-home responsibilities during that time? So just making sure to check in. And he's like, do what you got to do. So sometimes we make up these stories in our heads that people are feeling a certain way. And then I just went and shared how I was feeling and checking in. And he wasn't even feeling all the things that I had made up and built my guilt around.
Right. Yeah. And it's nice and refreshing, especially after the year of your plus of quarantine time and everybody being together in the nest and all up in each other's faces and spaces, it's like, it's nice to give ourselves a chance to miss each other and to have something like, oh, you don't know what I did today, so we have something new to talk about. Otherwise,
Yes.
you were right there the whole day. You saw everything. When I was telling y'all last week that Jeremy was like, we were talking about solo parenting or being the primary parent and la, la, la. I'm like, I did this for like months and months at a time by myself, right? He's like, yeah, but like, you never leave, because he was gone on a submarine. For context, if you don't know, he used to be an active duty submarine guy. Now he's part-time. So he's in the reserves. So he's home a lot. I mean, most of the time, but so am I. So he's like, you never leave. So they were really excited, or he was really excited to get to run this ship his way, senior and chief daddy on deck, where they were like in bed by 8, like they were living their best lives. So to the point where last night, now that I'm home and we're like bumbling and fumbling over each other, I'm like, can you just take the lead tonight? Like, I just want to watch and see how this goes. Like, I'm really considering stepping back, or at least trying to, instead of like being the controlling parent, because I was solo for so many years. It was easy for me to take that like role, but I'm like, oh wait, but he's actually probably better at it than me now, at least for what we need at this point with 3 kiddos and stuff. So we'll see how that goes tonight. But it's nice to give them a chance to step up and see what they're capable of.
And also taking off, because you had to be mommy and daddy while he was undersea. So also coming back to that masculine energy and the weight on your shoulders of like, let me just take this off for a moment and hand it over to Chief Daddy, who's very handsome, muscles,
handsome and capable.
But it's also preparing him and the kids for you when it is time for you to go into book mode, super focused book mode. So since we were talking about, them getting a chance to miss you and also to take on those responsibilities at home, I would love to talk a little bit about our squad trips, because I think I've talked about them maybe once on an episode here many moons ago. But yeah, I would just love for us to kind of explore that conversation on our relationship with squad trips and what we've been able to create and build over these several years.
Yeah, I was just in our iMessage thread yesterday reflecting on usually these trips. So we started our first SemiSquad trip, which Jadah wasn't physically present for, was in June of 2018. So it was me, Nicole, and Jen in Hawaii. And then was it that fall that we met up together all for the first time? And that was in Sausalito. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then in 2019, which really it's strange that it's been only 3 years, but it's like we've seen each other so many times, obviously not in 2020, but even in 2021, we've done 2 trips, and we did at least 3 or 4 in 2019. So it's just become this regular thing where it's like, you really have to be committed, because for all of us, well, some of us more than others, travel takes a lot. Me and Jadah need a lot of buffer time before and after we are on the move. But it's like, that's a big commitment to be traveling and doing for all of us for various reasons, right? Like for me, having little bitty humans, and then Jadah with her book timelines and manuscript and, businessy things and all of that. But we always tend to walk away with a homework assignment, which is cool. Even if it's just kind of casually, you never know when it's going to come up. You never know what area of life it's going to be about, but we'll be having conversations throughout our few days together. And it's like very clear, that's your homework. Like by the next time we see you, you better have handled that ish so that we don't have to have this same conversation next time.
Yes.
And it's really beautiful to look at that. Like I was just looking and recapping it, like I said, in the text last night, thinking like, this is such a beautiful, my homework assignments over the years have been so clearly just the reason and the journey that have led me to this exact point, whether it's, okay, you got to get support with yourself and with your marriage as y'all are navigating what life looks like when you're both home all the time. Okay, you actually do want a 3rd baby, or do you not? Like, what does this look like? Okay, bringing her into the world, talking about the book stuff. So reflecting on that yesterday was really sweet to me. What are your how would you describe it?
Yeah. I love the consistency and the frequency, because I'm like, I get to pull my Polly Pocket. Where I was saying at the end of our Austin trip, we literally just got back from Waco and Austin, Texas. And I just love because you and I talk so much, we co-work on Zoom, we're on Voxer and our on-demand walkie-talkie app to see you in person and in flesh and like, oh, it's just, I love it because we're not neighbors. We live many states away from each other. So that's, to me, just getting that in-person connection time, especially when you have been someone who's built an online business and so much of what you do is on, for me, a 13-inch screen. So that in-person, like girlfriend time, belly laughs, good food, and we're all
always good food.
Yes.
and so much. We eat so much.
We eat so much. Oh, all the cupcakes every day. We went to Magnolia Bakery and got cupcakes every single day that we were there. And then we took cupcakes home, but they were not as good. I don't know. Yours were probably better, but taking the cupcakes.
Oh, right. On the flight, there was probably some kind of drying situation happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think it's the face-to-face time. And even with Jen Kem, we're neighbors. We're less than a mile away from each other, like where we live.
Yeah.
And I see her more in different cities and states and countries. And so I just love that because when we're in our day-to-day lives and our day-to-day routines, we've got our stuff, we've got our commitments, we've got our teams, we've got our clients. And so there's something about prioritizing scheduled vacation time to be present with people that you love and adore. And there's also something very special about being with your girlfriends. It's different than being on a family trip. Like I feel
it's very different.
It's so different. My friend Amy Taylor, she's like, traveling with family is not a vacation. That's a trip.
It's a trip.
There's just so many more logistics where it's like, if I'm going on a trip, for squad time, it's just me, like I just have to be responsible for packing me and getting out and about. So I love that. I love the in-person connection time. And then leaving you, I was like, feels like I have to put you back in like the genie lamp, back in my pocket you go. So that in-person time. And it's also, that would be a high value of mine, is intimate, in-person, face-to-face, heart-to-heart, cozy with humans, which is the business model that I want to build as I finish this book, being able to lead more retreats and create more of that in-person connection time for other women entrepreneurs to connect in very similar ways that we're able to, where we're not just talking about business strategies and marketing and all of those things, which we do touch upon because we all are entrepreneurs, but also being able to talk about the deeper life stuff that impacts how we show up in our business and also impacts just everything, how we are in the world. So I love the range of our conversations, that we can talk business, we can talk money, we can talk scarcity, we can talk relationships, kids, all those things is really valuable to me for sure.
Same, all the things. And if you're listening to this at some point in the future, when Jadah is offering in-person experiences again, you got to sign up. You got to get on the wait list. You got to do the thing, because she is so talented, gifted in creating a sensory experience. Like I'm literally just looking at her Zoom picture right now because we're not on video. And I'm just like, her pictures that you see on her website or on her cover photos or whatever, it's just fun for me. One of my favorite things is your Mary Poppins bag, because Jadah usually packs lightly with like a carry-on only. And I bring what I call Big Perp, which is like an obnoxiously large purple suitcase that I put everything in. Even when I don't have children with me, I'm still overpacking and bringing snacks and water and la, la, la. But I love seeing Jadah's clothes in a closet. Like it's like a little boutique. Wherever she goes, her clothes, just the experience. And it's just so consistent. And to me, that's fun. Like to see us all pop out of the internet in our real, and just seeing how our personalities and our different styles show up in the physical things that we carry with us and how we set up our rooms or our bathrooms and whatever. To me, I delight in noticing those things, right? Because it's all reflection of the values and how you fill your space and what you're wearing. And that's another fun part.
I also, speaking of like popping out of the internet, I think that's another conversation I'd love to touch upon, because you and I are parallel play partners. And I feel like we're revving up for reemergence, but we've been in what I've been calling, especially due to the pandemic, a creative cocoon.
Yep.
And I also feel like it's really important to acknowledge you and I both have experienced loss and grief and the trauma that creates, especially when you do prioritize family, but also, want to make a living and want to sustain the lifestyle that we have.
Yeah.
But I'd love to just explore a conversation around our conversations behind the scenes and our relationship with the internet, with social media, with visibility, because we do want to write books that people read. So I'm just go wherever you feel around this conversation of our relationship with online and also reemergence and visibility. I know that's really big and wide.
Yeah. I mean, in Facebook relationship status terms, it's complicated because it's like we both know in our hearts, minds, bodies, and investments and business strategy that writing books and sharing our message with lots and lots of people, our experiences and distilling them, taking the essence out, like take this note, pass it along so that hopefully it will spark something valuable for other humans. We both know that that's part of who we were put here to be. And also we value privacy and we value flexibility and time to do whatever the F we want to do with the people that we love, to be able to go on trips and hang out with our families and have quiet time to ourselves and not have to necessarily live stream like we do to our, to each other in a Voxer thread to social media. But also we have fun when we do that. It's just, I think the key is on our terms and in our time from a place of overflow, creative sparkiness, rather than feeling like I have to do this so that I can get this result. And I think that's probably the defining thing, because it's not like social media. I mean, obviously that's how we met. So I'm so thankful for social media for so many reasons. And also just really mindful in the last few years that my relationship with it has changed so much. Whereas at the beginning, I used to love, sharing everything as it was happening, really, because it was just like blowing my mind how my business was growing and people were signing up to work with me. And this happened. Now I'm going to share this. And then things shifted. And I'm sure that's related to just my own stuff around people's responses. Obviously, not everybody's going to like us, and that's fine and natural and just how it is. But I was really triggered by triggering other people. So I kind of clammed up like a little oyster shell and stopped sharing for some things. And then also it's like, I have evidence that when I say things, people tend to like believe me or listen. And so part of my story over the last few years is like, I didn't want to lead people down a parade down the cul-de-sac, because I'm like, I didn't know where I wanted to lead people. I didn't know what I wanted to share. I didn't know what my message was going to be, air quotes, as if it existed and hasn't been obvious really and under my nose this whole time. But like to not see it, I didn't want to like lead people down the path to like a dead end in a way. So I also was letting that be a good story, an excuse to keep me from sharing. But I also think this is a great way for us to talk about the conversation we had with Liz Gilbert.
Yes, you were in my pocket.
Yeah, that was one of our like, wow, Polly Pocket mini win moments where it was like, whoa.
Yeah, I went to an event that Elizabeth Gilbert, the author of Eat, Pray, Love, and one of our favorite books, Big Magic. Mm-hmm. And they had these like pieces of paper where you could write down questions that might get asked on stage. And so I was like, Nicki, do you have any questions? And I was by myself. I went solo, which is so rare for me, but I went to San Francisco and I also got to meet her and say hi to her in person. And I asked like probably, the question that she gets asked over and over again of like, what's your number one advice for writing? I'm writing a second book. What's your advice? And she's just like, write to one person, just to one person, which is also what you would say in A Course About Copy, right?
Yeah.
So that was my in-person question, but then there was like the global stage question. And so I boxed Nicki, do you have any questions? I'll write it down and put it in the basket. And what was your question?
It's funny too, because like you're over there having this big magic evening and I'm like over here piddling around doing whatever. And I remember like seeing it and being like, what is my question? I could make one up real fast, but I want to think about it. And I understand if I take time to think about it, then I might miss the opportunity, but I'm okay with that. Like I'm processing this in my mind as I go then to shower. So I'm like, I'm going to see if something comes up. Great ideas tend to just shower down when you're taking time away. So the question I had was, what is your best advice for someone who's creating in the public eye? It was something around those lines, because to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, my recovering teacher's pet, gold star, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, it really triggered me to trigger other people. I got to get comfortable with that. If I want to share my message with more people, we're only going to rise to the level that we're willing to embrace criticism from total strangers and even from people that we know and love and care about, but also disagree with. Like, we're limited based on what we're willing to accept in that way. So that was my question. And Jadah was already in her seat.
Yes.
Up in the top of the theater.
I was in the top. This was a huge theater. And they went on, had their conversation, and I could just listen to her talk for hours, but it was more probably 1 hour. And then they came to the Q&A, which was towards the end. And so they only had time, I think, for 2 questions. And one of those 2 questions was Nicki's question. So she was there with me and she answered the question. Do you remember what her answer was?
Yes. Well, the way that I remember it, let me know if this was totally not it, but the way that I interpreted what you told me that she said was, instead of saying the public eye, consider it the human family. And so in my mind, I'm right, because I've been seeing it this is me at a panel interview in a big empty warehouse where I'm coming up and presenting my creative work, because I had also been doodling a totally different book at the time. And so I'm envisioning myself, here world, here's the offering. Do you approve or disapprove? And the way that just the phrase human family just made me realize we're literally all making this up as we go. I mean, sure, I do believe it's possible that we've been here in different lifetimes. Maybe they're parallel happening now. I don't know. My brain can't really process all of that. But we're creating this as we go. It's when I told Bryson, my 10-year-old, at some point in the last year or two, I'm but I've never been a mom before. I'm actually learning this as we go. Whereas it's in his mind, of course, in his perception, it's I've always been a mom. I'm that wasn't the case. You are the reason that I'm learning how to be a mom. Likewise, in the human family, we're all making this up. It's not the authors who are authoring have been here before and they already know this. They're also just figuring it out as we go. And so it's just about contributing to the conversation, which is one of my favorite aha moment perception shifts from Denise Duffield Thomas around be a contributor, not a guru. Just allow yourself to jump in, the big collective human family game of double dutch, and just allow yourself to get in there and see what happens. What was your interpretation of what she said?
Well, that you described it perfectly. You're an excellent, concise storyteller. I'm yeah, that's it. But what I love is resurfacing this conversation, because you and I are in tandem, holding hands, jumping into the deep end together as we are in book mode, but also know that we're going to have to shift to connection mode and sharing and showing our work, as Austin Kleon says in his book, Show Your Work. And I think it's the perfect pep talk and reminder for us that we don't have to look at social media. One, I think it's really confusing because they're calling it media, but and that we don't have to look at it as a marketing tool and strategy, even though we know that is a benefit that can come from that lets people know that you exist, that you have a body of work to share, and they can opt in and learn more about what you're up to. So there is that, but to think of it of we are connecting with the human family, I think it's just so beautiful and so poetic and so Elizabeth Gilbert,
right?
To kind of take that Big Brother lens off and what you talk about, being a performing monkey and just be yourself, in Aladdin. And I feel, I did a couple of IG stories because I was getting inspired by you. I didn't post any stories while we were on our trip. I love being present and not documenting in the moment. And I might have my own trauma from Simple Green Smoothies days of growing a following to over 400,000 followers. If that cannot be my life where I'm just double tapping and hearting and liking and commenting and all of those pieces.
Yeah, but also you were working on your book, so it's you were present with us and present with your book. And those were the 2 things that got to be on your docket, lucky to be with you last week.
But I was inspired by you because you were sharing, stories on Instagram. And I'm like, I just love seeing Nicki. Like it's because I don't get
I love seeing you. Oh my gosh. We're going to need our therapy appointment to disentangle ourselves when we decide to. It's not time yet. It's not time.
Yeah. And well, I think because we've been each other's personal private social media feeds, I'm like,
right.
I share my whole life with you and Voxer, like photos, videos.
Like one woman IG stories.
Yes, it's totally.
One viewer.
So it was just interesting to try that on. And I feel different. Like I don't know with the book process, with, post, we're still in a pandemic, but I feel different. Like there's something that feels different in this next season of reemergence. And it's because I'm trusting my own body and intuition, not forcing myself to do something because I have to or should or anything like that. Just being in a true, authentic relationship with myself on how I want to express and share and just play and experiment and not, I don't know, just not be so obsessed with metrics or conversions, or if you're the only person watching, that would be fine too, because that's it's already true. Like I know I've got one true fan, Nicki Elledge Brown.
That's right. And it's just a different place than the same. Like when you're talking about Simple Green Smoothies days, and for me, of course, about copy days, obviously Instagram stories weren't a thing, and I didn't have anywhere near an audience of 400,000 people or whatever. But like I said, I was sharing a lot more. And one of the terms that we've talked about behind the scenes a lot is inside out processing. Like, I just know that I'm okay with it. If there's something big, I am going to like talk to you and my inner circle first before I'm sharing it. And that's not to make it right or wrong. It's just my style in this season of life, probably forever, but maybe not. And so it's just like knowing and being aware, like it serves. And it's a beautiful thing for people who may not have the intimate inside out kind of connections that we have, to where their social media community is that place for them to share. And I'm like so grateful that that's an option for those people. I think that my pendulum and my thinking about it swung from like, I'm obsessed and on Facebook all the time, in the early years. And then like, I want to run away from the internet in the middle. And now I'm just kind of finding my pendulum swinging down towards the bottom, where it's like, sometimes I'm on, sometimes I'm off. I'm not going to apologize. I don't think I've ever really done that. Where, some people are like, sorry, guys. There's that hilarious tweet that I know is in a draft of my book somewhere. I don't know that it'll ever make it, but it was, and I'm forgetting the person who wrote it on Twitter, but it was like, guys, if you're going to be checked out for the holidays, can you really, please let us know, because that's the last thing we need to be dealing with. Like, we've already got, our plates are full. It's really a lot funnier than that. But it's just like when people feel the need to announce that they're taking a break, I'm like, no, again, people, you got to do what you got to do. But I feel like if we're feeling the need to announce, I'm not going to be available for the next 48 hours or 3 days or 2 weeks or whatever, then we're way too dependent on seeing each other through that one little app. Like that's okay. We don't need to actually apologize or forecast. And like, people are going to have to use tools to be able to manage that if they need to. So
yeah. I think we're growing up and rewire does not feel like the right word, but reorienting our relationship with how and when we communicate to people out there,
in the human family.
Because I'm trying to think of, I sent a newsletter out today. I sent one out last week. I'll send a few more as I'm, releasing these conversations. And then I'll probably go back into my little creative cocoon and reemerge. I think that's the path of a creative, or a path that feels good to me in this season of my life.
A path, right? Yeah, for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it could shift, it could change. Like, I'm so inspired by Nicole, how she's able to document. Basically, she has a reality TV show on IG stories,
right?
And there's a full story arc going on, and it's continual, and we're just so impressed with how she documents our whole trips. And I'm like, wow. I can't keep up with all these photos and videos. Yeah. You'll get a sprinkle of 2 and 3 for the next month. Like, that's the content for where she's like posting this in, 48 hours. Yeah. And that's really benefited her. It's 11:11 and 1:11 where you are. I just wanted to say that.
We ended our trip on November. Oh, let's document this so that we do not forget that we came home. We all went home on last Thursday, November 11th. And I took these ladies to Buc-ee's on our drive from Waco to Austin. And my receipt total on 11/11 was 11/11.
Divine. I
don't even know what I did with the receipt, but I'm sure. I didn't document that on social media, but I will document it here so that we remember the magic that we ushered in some kind of portal through Buc-ee's. And I'm just can't wait to see what it brings. But yeah, to go with what you're saying, yes, it's a path that works for now.
Well, I think this reemergence, as you say, on her terms, is what we're doing. We are stepping into that season for us and really trusting ourselves of what's the right tempo. Because I remember being so stressed, feeling so much guilt of, oh, I didn't send something out. I must be a bad business owner. I must be a bad this. And I might not get as many whatevers for that path, but I am choosing into that and being intentional and linking the benefits and the drawbacks of that choice. And I'm okay with it. If I wanted a different result or I wanted something and I felt inspired and compelled enough, I could ramp it up. Yeah. And you probably will hear more from me, maybe in 2022.
That's what it was. That's what I was going to say is the little soapbox moment where we were like, okay, I'm so looking forward to and trust and expectation that we're coming around the mountain. And at some point there's going to be a get me to the mic moment where, and I know that's going to happen once the book is out and it's ready. You're like, oh my gosh, y'all, I did not put all this effort into this for nobody to hear about it. So it's like bang the drum, like get the drum roll ready, get the microphone stand, get me to that podcast, get me to that virtual stage or in-person stage or whatever it is. And so it's like, it's okay also for us to be in those stages and seasons at different times. It's just for me, I was like, nah, I'm good here for a while, and still I'm like, okay, I'm not in a rush to get to the microphone, but I do have a feeling at certain points when you're at a certain point in the creative process where it's like you have the object, like this is the thing, this is the culmination, this is the resource. Kind of like when I created a course about copy, I'm like, look, this is the most effective, like efficient way for you to access the knowledge that I have been refining with all of these clients over all of this time. And it's all in one spot. And you can just feel this relief of like, go there. It's all here. It's there. Let me take a break over here with my towel on the brow and whatever. But it's like, it'll be so amazing to have it there in one spot. So it'll be fun when that's happening. Also knowing that like the anticipation of that season is also half the fun too, to know that it's coming. But right now it's like, you're really earning it. So it's going to feel that much more satisfying when you do get to that point where you're like, yep, check out my book, swipe up.
Yes. Yes. So if you'd like to follow us on Instagram so we can do the swipe up feature. Oh, I love you to pieces, Nicki. This was such a fun conversation. Is there anything, last thoughts, pep talks, just anything you want to share or say before we say our goodbyes here and then hellos inside our private Instagram story feed for one in Voxer?
Right. As we said right before we got onto this one, I was like, ooh, I can't wait to go listen to whatever the heck we were talking about in the episode that published in 2020. I'm so looking forward to listening back to this conversation a year, 2 years from now when both of our books are out, because it's just been so nourishing and sweet to be able to navigate this season together, where it's like we were talking about on our trip, because all of us are working on books in some form or another. And then once they start coming out, like I have a feeling we're just going to keep cranking them out. So it's kind of like a sweet, I wouldn't say calm before the storm. That's not what it is, but it's just like the before pick, like when Muppet Babies, like the baby version kind of, like I just think it's going to be cute to look back at this time and be like, y'all, you finally figured it out. You finally, like, time, energy, effort, awareness, support, all of those things converged in the perfect time. And of course, the further we get, the more awareness we have of why things have taken this amount of time. Like I said, looking back at my homework assignments over the years, I'm like, oh, right, I needed to get my family foundation in place, get my baby girl here, get the team roster, everybody's here and settled. Of course, I wasn't going to step on the gas with business if I didn't have this sorted first. So it's just going to be so beautiful to listen back to this conversation. I'm so, so thankful to have you as a friend, a Polly Pocket, like a soulmate in this lifetime, and also to have a front row seat to you bringing this book to the world, because it is so powerful for you to put all of this in one spot. It's going to be, again, whenever you're listening to this, if there's a link to pre-order or purchase or whatever, I promise it's going to be worth it to you, because Jadah has so many amazing stories. Her clients have so many inspiring stories, and the way that she leads, I mean, you can tell obviously, or you wouldn't be listening to this podcast, but her inspiration cooties are one of a kind.
Oh, Nicki, I love it. And I see us so much closer to the big vision that we've set over the last couple of years of, just on this last trip, we talked about, we're going to do like a 3-year squad book tour.
Never ending.
Yes. And
this is the tour that never ends. Yeah.
And it goes on, my friend. So I just remember when I was at the Elizabeth Gilbert, her sharing that we're like, that'll be us one day, where we can just be friends on a stage, talking about our books, sharing our stories, leading book writing retreats. Like it just feels like it's so close. Yeah. And yet we are really good at making our timelines feel expansive so that we don't burn out and feel overwhelmed and exhausted in the process. And I think you and I are really great models of that, of just doing things on our own timeline and trusting the process. And I'm just so thankful to be in your corner, and I get the inspiration cooties from you and all the word nerd isms like author pants. It's just been so much fun. So please tune in to Nicki and all the places, NickiElledgeBrown.com. And of course, we'll link to show notes in all the respective places. And I just want to squeeze you and love you. I can't wait till 2022.
Same. This show may be over, but the conversation is just beginning. Head on over to naptimeempires.com/Facebook so you can join my free... Wait, did I say free? I meant priceless, rapidly growing community of Naptime Empire builders for deeper discussions, behind-the-scenes scoop, and of course, updates whenever I've got new stuff coming up for you. naptimeempires.com/Facebook. See you there.
See you next time. Thanks for listening.
Good job, buddy.